Hi, just a quick video. I wouldn't normally do a petition like this, and I thought I'd put it on my main channel to get the biggest audience possible. So sorry if this isn't relevant to you. It's really an Australian thing, and I'll link to the petition down below. But what it is a petition to get free or affordable access to Australian standards. Now, I think this is a real big deal, and it has been a big deal in the past, and it's currently up to 17,000 signatures. It's only got 2 days left. So please, if you think this is a good idea, that we should get free or affordable access to Australian standards, then I encourage you to click the link down below and sign the petition, as I have done, and many others as well. So what this is, so I don't know who did it, so thanks to the person who did it. Anyway, let's have a quick read, shall we? Currently, the Australian standards are restricted to professionals, tradesmen, organisations through a private entity, and we'll get in that in a minute. These standards are becoming increasingly expensive, and the restrictions on accessibility are increasing. These standards are essential to ensure the safety and operability of our infrastructure and our services to the public. For a single task or service, a number of these standards may be required. This is very true. If you're working, they mention these standards are also constantly being revised, so new versions are required. Some standards are mandated by legislation. Many of the people that require these standards are in small organizations or even sole traders that cannot support these overheads. This in essence will force small organizations and sole traders out of business, or necessitate services being performed without having access to these standards. The existing model is unsustainable and will potentially lead to incidents, operability, and disruption to operational infrastructure. Here's an example for, they put it for EEs in here. A small electrical engineering company with 10 people that performs electrical design may need access to hundreds of standards on a single project. And having worked on stuff like this, yes, this is a big deal. You do often require many different standards as you go down the rabbit hole of the design process. And it's even worse if you're working on like infrastructure, like you're a civil engineer or a mechanical engineer, like working on big things where there's many different standards covering it. This can be a big deal. The cost of these is greater than the profit margin on this project. And please leave it in the comments down below if you've had this happen to you. If if you're a one-man band or a small business and you've had to pony up for all of these standards. Can you pass it through to your client or whatever? Probably not, right? Anyway, so this is a official government petition, Parliament of Australia, to take this seriously. I believe it's one of the leading petitions at the moment. If we search for signatories down here, stop the digital identity legislation. Oh, I have to check that out. It's second. So please, let's get this one right up there. I think it's important because myself, for example, what was this, a year ago? Feb 5th, just over a year ago, I had some aircon and additional aircon installed at my house. And this is the wiring job. I'll link to this video as well. They goofed it up. They not only failed once, I asked them to come back and fix it, but they failed again a second time. And I actually needed access to the standards to actually to verify whether or not the wiring in my house was actually legal or not. And a viewer who has access to the standards had to actually send me the relevant section for it. And this is actually the to just give you an example, is the AS 3000. It's the standard that all mains wiring and house wiring and industrial wiring and all when you're electrician comes to install something, they have to follow Australian Standard 3000. It's the wiring rules, but there are thousands, tens of thousands of different standards. I don't know. Does anyone know how many? There's tons in all aspects of, not just engineering, but all sorts of other things as well. And these things are quite expensive. So if you go through and actually buy this thing, it is like, if you want to buy it, it's $224. And it's hard to find like a pirated PDF version. You might be able to get one or something. But these standards, if you need one, you've got to pony up the money. And that's just one of them. If you're on a project that needs 10 different standards, I've worked on projects that, require many different standards. As as I said, as you go down the rabbit hole. And it's just nuts. So now let's actually read. There's a Wikipedia page for Standards Australia. Who is Standards Australia that actually run this? Have been going for 100 years. Okay, I didn't know the history here, but here you go. Standards Australia is a standards organisation. It's established through recognised through a memorandum of understanding with the Australian government as the primary non-government standards development body in Australia. So they're responsible for developing the standards, okay? And of course, they have to get paid for developing the standards and everything else, right? So it is a company limited by guarantee. As of 1998, it has 73 members representing groups invested in all sorts of services, etc., right? And they're associated with ISO, and which is the International Standards Organization, and all that sort of stuff, right? So listing of the sale of standards. Here's the interesting bit. In 2003, Standards Australia sold its standards publication business and entered into a renewable contract, giving the company SAI Global, based in Chicago, risk management services, quality assurance, wank, wank, wank. Okay, so some big company, they sold the rights to it, exclusive licensing rights for the sale of the standards. So when you buy this is where the money is going to, presumably. And SAI was floated on the Australian Stock Exchange. Great, okay. Initially, Standards Australia retained a 40% interest, but they progressively sold this down to zero to focus exclusively on its core business of developing and maintaining its suite. There you go. There are 7,000 Australian standards, okay? The contract was further renewed through 2018. SAA was acquired by, Barin Private Equity Asia. Okay, so now some Asian company owns it. Great. Okay, wonderful. That's where the money's going when you're forced to buy these standards. Standards for the construction of buildings were reported to cost an average of $120. That sounds cheap compared to the wiring rules one. And the National Construction Code directly or indirectly reference several hundred such standards. Obviously, you have to pay if you get like a physical copy of it, right? You know, the wiring standards, I think, is, I don't know how many pages, but it's very thick, right? So I'm not saying get that, the paper copy for free, but geez. Anyway, after negotiations broke down in 2016 with national and state libraries, the standards ceased to be accessible from 9 libraries that had been offering public access to the standards at an annual cost of $14,000 per library. So they didn't even though the libraries were paying for it. And if I wanted to, I could have gone into the state library here in New South Wales and in Sydney here and presumably got a copy of the AS3000 and looked up the thing myself. You can't even do that anymore. As a result, in 2018, several groups, including the Building Products Innovation Council, Master Builders Association, they're pretty big, and Australian Senate Economics Reference Committee, and the Choice Consumer Advocacy Organisation called for the publication rights to be brought under government control and for the standards to become freely accessible. Several groups advocated that a national standard should be provided free of charge to the relevant members of the industry. The publishing agreement, currently held by SAI Global, is due to expire in 2018, and the imminent release of AS3000, this sparked a renewed campaign. That's what looks like somebody's just updated this, and that's what they're talking about here. Example, here's some, electrical AS3000 plug and socket outlets. So if you want to know about your plug and socket outlets, there's another couple $100. Thank you very much. This is just like lightning protection, all sorts of things, right? It's just nuts. And it looks like it's owned by a foreign entity this is an absolute cash cow for them. They're just milking that cow for all that cash. So yeah, I think this is an excellent thing to get behind, free or affordable access to Australian standards. Absolutely. And if you agree, please link down below. And what's it like in your country about these sorts of standards? Do you have a similar thing where you got to pay for these, or is it free in your country? Please let us know in the comments. Is this like an Australian? Are we just getting bent over and thoroughly rogered here for paying for these standards? Please let us know, because this is, I think this would be really good. And I could access these standards for in videos and stuff like that as well. So I think this is a really worthy petition, and hopefully you're not too upset that I put this on the main channel, but I think it's important enough. Anyway, thoughts and comments down below, please. Catch you next time.